Oh, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's podcast, the Players podcast, the Prognosticators podcast, the Pedialyte podcast, which we have to talk about in a second, the only Flyers podcast. I'm Russ Joy at Joy on Broad, joined as always by the beautiful soul, the man of the hour, a man who has to be riding high now that your team, your town, your Philadelphia Phillies have won not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, but 7 consecutive games. Rob Thompson's number one fan, Anthony Sanfilippo, he of the Crossed Up podcast with Bob Wankel for all of your Phillies coverage. My pal, Anthony Sanfilippo, find him on Twitter at AnSanPhilly. How are you, you beautiful man, you?
Well, I mean, if people just listen to me, I told them that this was going to be coming for the Phillies. You just had to wait. But everybody was in panic mode, and this is what they ready to write them off early, and it's okay. It's all right. I just sit back and wait. It's all good. I'm a big, me, Russ. I'm a big picture guy. I'm not the kind of person who overreacts in the moment. So either positively or negatively, I don't. But that's okay. I'm curious. The way you did your open today, which was a little bit different than usual. You made a point to pause on the Pedialyte podcast of all things. Yeah. Which I've always felt was kind of like a weird one. Like I think it was like that was like a weird one-off way back at the beginning of this podcast, where we mentioned Pedialyte, and it stayed in your kind of like as part of your opening salvo every episode. And it seems like you're getting some grief. Are you getting grief about this?
So I know that one of these is your burner account, so I think it's important that I address this elephant in the room. All right, so one, the Pedialyte podcast, if I remember correctly, came up around the time that somebody had a baby. One of our listeners had a baby. It wasn't BJ Beretta. It was somebody before that. Somebody had a baby, and they're like, I'm sitting here, feeding my kid Pedialyte. It wouldn't have been a baby then. It was like a toddler or something. Like my kid's up sick, and I'm up listening to the podcast and like popping, some Pedialyte in a cup for my kid or something. And so we picked up the Pedialyte podcast. Well, there was somebody who last week. This is part of the problem, right? Am I petty? Okay. There are some people who believe I'm very petty. There are many people who believe I'm petty. Okay. I get tagged in a thread by somebody who says that I bring zero joy to the podcast and that I brought too much negativity. I need to address this in a second. But among this thread, somebody said, it was Dan Marcus, I pulled up the thread, asked if I can get rid of saying Pedialyte podcast from the signature open because it's the only P word that has nothing to do with hockey or the podcast. Apparently doesn't notice that I usually also include the Pampers podcast, but I digress. The Pedialyte pod, it's just a deep cut. As Anthony said, it's a deep cut. And at some point, I might replace Pedialyte. Maybe there's something else. There's another P word out there. I don't know what other P word there is that we could add to this intro. But if there is, if somebody has a suggestion out there, give me P words that start. Please don't make it a silent P. Pterodactyl will not count. Okay? Let's not get too crafty here.
Psoriasis?
Please don't do... Why? Oh, God, why? Don't... No. Why? What is wrong? Why? No.
It's a P word. You asked for a P word?
Pseudo.
Ptolemy?
The Pseudoscience podcast. No? Ptolemy? Oh, stop. Okay. We've got all these silent P words. Kevin Kincaid over on It's Always Soccer in Philadelphia has the segment words that end in the letter A, and then we say them with a British accent. So there's like magmer instead of magma, right? Or like, you're going to go to India, right? Anyway, so this is going to be our new thing. All right, Silent P. That's going to be a new segment of the podcast in honor of the Pedialyte podcast. All right, great. That's awesome. Pterodactyls with psoriasis. Great. We're off to a good start. Here's the problem that I had, Anthony. In this thread, I have never been as offended as I was in this moment, okay? Some people have said some pretty egregious things to me in the past, all right? And I get it, and it's fine. But somebody said that they thought I was phoning it in, that I phoned in last week's episode. And did I phone in last week's episode? Be honest.
No, I don't think you phoned it in. No.
There we go. I don't
had to
like,
think about
I
it.
don't like, I don't like that there's a pause
I
there.
didn't want you to think I was. I didn't want you to think I was debating. I was just like, what was last week's episode? I had to think about it.
Last week's episode, we had a realistic breakdown about the Flyers
did. No,
coaching,
it was good.
coaching search. We touched on so many different things. Here's the problem: if you listen to the podcast and you listen to like the first 5 minutes, and the first 5 minutes dictates if you're going to listen to like the back half, like not in back half, the remaining 55. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, hopefully you like the first 5 and you listen for the remaining 55. But like, if you tune out at that point and you're like, "Well, these guys are pretty damn negative," we pretty much do find some balance by the end of the show. But I was like, man, phoning it in. Here we are. All right, let's be real about what the Flyers are, or what the Flyers have been. They're a bad team entering an offseason that they need to nail pretty well, or at least set some kind of a path forward so that people know if this is a team that really does believe it can aggressively retool, or one that's going to rebuild, or whatever. We're sitting here every week talking about the Philadelphia Flyers, all right? Not every Flyers podcast, if there are any, talk about the Flyers every week. Not every quote-unquote Flyers podcast, if there are any, is going to talk about this team every week. But we're committed to doing it because we love and we care. Phoning it in had me so upset. Not quite as upset as something else that we can get to in a little bit. But Anthony, I am here. I have my phone in my pocket, but I can assure the fine listeners, the thousands of Snow the Goalie listeners, I am not phoning in this episode. We are here for a legitimate conversation about the Philadelphia Flyers and other hockey-related topics. And I'm happy that I'm here with you, okay? And I'm happy that we are here together, and I'm happy that people have been tuning in to this show because for some reason people like to watch us on YouTube. I'm happy about all of it. Were you like batting your eyelashes at me? Was that just like an eye roll? What was that?
That was me cocking my head to the side because you said you were so happy to be here with me, and I was like, really?
I am happy to be here with you. We're recording this on Thursday night, all right? This is usually a time that I reserve for my wife and I to sit down together and watch a little bit of TV. The kids are down for bed, and instead of doing that time, I'm here with my hockey wife, Anthony Sanfilippo, and I am thrilled, and I want to ask you, okay? In the week since we last recorded, one other big name has now hit the market in the coaching candidacy pool.
Yep.
Bruce Cassidy from the Bruins is now out there. Recently won a Jack Adams trophy over former Flyers coach Alain Vigneault. Anthony, let's be real here for a second. Will the Flyers, do you expect or have you heard that the Flyers will sit down and at least have a first-round interview with Bruce Cassidy?
I believe it happened today.
Are you sure though? Because you don't want to say that it happened, and then have some people aggregate it, and then you get like a few of these like piss pot people. I don't know if piss pot's a word, but I'm gonna use piss pot, like the pee pants people who are on Twitter who like to shit all over the things that you say and do and report. These people are gonna be like, well, actually, if it comes out, Ant, that like they talked to Bruce Cassidy on Wednesday night, night, or like they're gonna talk to him on Friday morning, they're gonna be like, this Anthony Sanfilippo, he's back here, he's hawking his BS again. I always knew you could never trust him. He's just a clickbait artist. Anyway, continue.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's me. I can't say that he was in person, but I do believe that they spoke to him today. It could have been a Zoom meeting, but I believe that this was an interview that did take place today because they're getting ready for round 2, but they did want to get a first interview in with Bruce Cassidy, and I believe that it took place today, at least on a Zoom level. I'm not certain if he actually made it into Philadelphia / Voorhees in person, but they did. I'm pretty confident that they did speak.
I need the Flyers to not hire Bruce Cassidy because every time I say his name, I want to say Butch Cassidy, and then I wait for the Sundance Kid. It is too problematic for me. Or I just have to call him Bruce, but then I don't like Springsteen, and then I get all those weirdos in my mentions on Twitter as well, so like I don't know how to feel here. Is he a fit, though?
BC.
Like, what?
BC.
Yeah, we can go BC. BC's fine.
Right?
But then I think about Brian Colangelo, I think about nepotism, I think about like, burner accounts, and it's too much. Too much, Ant. Can we go with something else? Is there another Cassidy?
Just Cass.
Cass? Oh, I think of Big Cass. Big Cass and Enzo.
Mama
SAWFT Soft. Little pro wrestling thing. All right, I might be able to get away with that one. That might be okay. Cass. Okay. Cass. If he gets hired, we'll interview him. We'll ask him what we can call him. But if he tells us we have to call him Bruce Cassidy, that's out. Sorry in advance, and we're also not calling you coach. You mentioned that the Flyers might be starting the second round, and an interesting thing that's been going on that people have taken notice of is John Buccigross, of course, of ESPN, tweeted a few days ago or about a week ago an image of, or no, it was on the 3rd. I remember it was on the 3rd. It was a picture of John Tortorella split screen with Gritty, and that was it. That was the tweet. And then I believe it was on Wednesday, retweeted it and said again. So one could surmise that means that John Tortorella either has completed or will be brought back in for a second round interview with the Philadelphia Flyers. I want to revise something I said last week. Last week I said that I wasn't so sure about bringing in John Tortorella because I think that it gets them to be a bubble-ish team, and I don't know how to feel about it. I will tell you right now, if John Tortorella gets hired here, I will be fine. I will be perfectly happy with it. I think it'll be okay. Is it an inspiring hire? I don't know. Is it an out-of-the-box hire? No. Could it be the best hire for the Flyers if Barry Trotz chooses to go elsewhere? They could certainly do worse.
Well, I would rank Tortorella third behind Trotz and Cassidy. The only reason I don't think Cassidy gets the gig here, even if he wants it, is because Cassidy has notoriously been hard on younger players. And I think that's something that we already saw not work here.
Yeah.
With Vigneault, I mean, there was like that real separation. We had this conversation between the veteran guys and the younger guys. So I don't necessarily know if you want to go down that path again. So but as far as being a coach, like who's got the track record and who would be the fastest track to success, I would put him between Trotz and Tortorella. That's not a knock on Tortorella by any stretch of the imagination. I still think he's a really good coach. I just think that his system is not as conducive to winning quicker. I think this is one of the concerns you had last week, and I felt was fair, that he gets you closer to the bottom of the playoffs than he does to the top. But at the same time, I can't see in any world how the Flyers would be a top end team next year anyway.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter. Like to me, like if Tortorella and Cassidy and Trotz, even for that matter, would all get you to roughly the same place within a year, well then okay, then it's just a matter of who do you think can continue to develop that beyond.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about a team that's got some young players like the Flyers have, then maybe Cassidy's not the right fit. Maybe he's not. So, I mean, that's just, again, just an outside perspective on that. But one thing I can say to this, Russ, Saravalli put a tweet out that the Flyers will bring back Tortorella as part of their second round of interviews. So once I saw that tweet, I started making some calls, and I was told by somebody today, as a matter of fact, early this morning, that of all the experienced coaches that the Flyers are in, and they've interviewed some guys who are not as experienced as well, but of all the experienced coaches, Tortorella is the one guy that wants this job more than any other. Okay. He wants to coach the Flyers. Whereas the other guys probably have the Flyers on their list somewhere, just not at number one. Which is interesting to me because then, if a guy really, really wants the gig and he's got the track record that John Tortorella has, to me, I say, then give him the job and let's go on. Right? I mean, that's how I look at it. Like, I mean, if you're sitting there and you're waiting, and look, it's starting to look more and more like Trotz is not going to go to Winnipeg. Okay, the rumblings are now that that's not going to happen, right? So Winnipeg's not going to be the place that he ends up. So does that mean that there's a better chance that he comes to Philadelphia? Sure, but it's a slightly better chance
He's going to go
It's
to
not.
Boston.
It doesn't suddenly make the Flyers a favorite by any stretch of the
Boston.
imagination.
Boston Trotz.
I don't know.
Nah,
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Boston. Yeah,
They're
Boston,
in a weird
I think,
spot. Boston finally feels like they're a little bit vulnerable.
Well, they are. They're definitely vulnerable. I think with Boston is a situation where they're going to just kind of blow it up and start over. I mean, Bergeron's not going to. He's going to. He sounds like he's going to retire. You got two top end players who are going to miss the first few months of the season, coming off of surgeries, and in Marchand and Charlie McAvoy. And
Rumors
now
about Pasternak being.
Pasternak is not happy with the general manager. Said he won't come back if Sweeney's still there. So that the Bruins might have to trade Pasternak, right?
Yep.
So I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in Boston, and I think that Boston, is about ready to hit the tank. So I don't see that as a fit for Trotz. I think that the teams that have a better chance of getting him than the Flyers would be either Vegas or Dallas. Mm-hmm. I think those are the ones. I think those are two teams that have proven to be, good playoff teams and have the talent to potentially win, and just need that coach to kind of get them to that next step. I think those are the two that I think he would put both of them ahead of the Flyers in my mind. It's
fair. That's fair. Here's the thing, right? Let's be realistic about this for a second. Can we be real? Can we have an honest moment? Let me just kind of like tear down a little bit of like the magic here of the Snow the Goalie podcast. Okay, let's have an honest conversation. All right, let me talk to you like I would talk to you off the podcast. You ready? Because I've noticed now, listening back to the show, that sometimes I feel like I don't sound like myself. So let me just try this. I genuinely do think that like there's a chance that if you're John Tortorella and you actively want this job, I'm concerned a little bit in that this job should not be the most attractive job out there. Now, if the thought here is that Tortorella isn't going to be up for consideration, or he knows that he's really not in consideration for some of these other jobs, then like whatever, I guess I get it. Maybe Tortorella just likes the idea of coaching in a city that's going to be super passionate, that like he's just going to get away with whatever he wants. Like if he says crazy shit to the press, like he's going to get away with it. If he decides that like he's going to lambaste a player publicly, that the fans are actually going to be more supportive of that than they are going to be, think it's a deterrent, right? Or detrimental. I just like I don't know. I feel like John Tortorella at this point, if I'm him, I keep the TV job. This isn't a surefire path to a Stanley Cup. And I feel like if you're at that point in your coaching career, you should be actively looking for a job that gives you a chance at winning a Stanley Cup. Now, if you're John Tortorella and you think that like this team, theoretically this year, you do whatever, you're kind of treading water for a bit, maybe you're like going to go for a good, I don't think this organization's going to tank. So I'm going to take them out of the Bedard sweepstakes. I'm going to take them out of having a legitimate top, 3 pick this year. If the idea is like tread water and kind of be like a 12th place team, an 11th place team, like that to me is a wasted year. If you think that somehow you can like turn this thing around in like 2 years, and like by year 3, you're a kind of like top 4 team in the East, I don't know. Like, is that good enough? You know what I mean? Like, I can't conceptualize why somebody would actively want to jump into this situation. And like, I have not been a shy about my belief that like the likelihood of this thing going sideways and Chuck Fletcher being taken out of his position with the front office, or like, moved up so that somebody else can kind of take his spot or whatever, like that is a realistic possibility in the next 2 years. And if that's the case, you're kind of like a lame duck as a coach too, because every GM wants to bring in their own coach. And so there's so many things that, like, I guess being here and being in this market, I look at it and I go, I don't understand why somebody would want this job. And at the same time, it's like, well, Tortorella's not an idiot. So, like, there has to be something attractive about this place. And it's not even me trying to be, like, a downer or being, like, the super negative guy. Because I want the team to be good. We talked about this. We want the team to be good. We want to cover a good team. We want to talk about a good team. But, like, they're not good. And I don't see a path to being good. If there is, and Chuck Fletcher executes it, then great. And if in 2 months from now, we're looking at a team that could legitimately somehow contend for a cup, I will sing his praises on the show. And I will sing the praises of whatever coach comes in and does great. But, like, I don't know. Am I crazy for just like not totally understanding why an experienced head coach like this would want the job? I feel like this is one of those outside of the box kind of hires, one of those up and coming young coaches that I talked about last week, that like those people should want any NHL job because they want to take that next step. I just don't get why a Tortorella would be interested in this. Am I crazy?
Well, again, and I had said to you before the show started, off air, you have that perspective because you're here, and because you live with this team season in, season out, and because of that, you look at it and say, this team sucks. This team's they've been the same team for the last 10 years. Nobody cares anymore. They're really terrible. Blah 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 blah. And it's just that's kind of what the narrative is that it gets built in this market. But it's not. I don't think the Flyers are viewed that way outside the market. I think the Flyers are looked at outside the market by people and say, yeah, they need to figure it out. Yeah, they need to get better. But they're still the Flyers. They're still an iconic brand. They're still, outside of the original six, probably the next most iconic team in the sport of hockey in the NHL.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like that's an attractive place to be. That's an attractive team to go coach. You're going to get a lot of publicity. You're going to get a lot of media. You're going to end up on, in a lot of games on television. So I mean, you're going to get that kind of thing, and the belief is still there, whether you want to agree with it or not, or anybody wants to agree with it or not. The belief is still there that it is a place that players would want to play. Now, I know we've had this discussion that they haven't really brought in the big name free agent to come and want to play here for a while, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not an attractive location. As a matter of fact, if you go back, there was a poll done at some point during this past season, and I forget when it was.
Yeah, I know what you're going to reference.
And it was asking agents, like, where do you recommend to your players that they go and sign? And the Flyers, I think we're still second or third on that list. Like, this is a well-respected organization from the outside. So there's a perspective that we have that we get to see being around the team a lot more, and then there's that perspective from outside where they think it's got a little bit more gravitas, right? So I think that's what it is. I mean, so if you're John Tortorella, like this is you could be the head coach of the Flyers. You could be the guy that brings the Flyers back to prominence.
Okay.
If you believe in yourself as a coach, that's an attractive thing, man. That's an attractive job.
That part is fine, and I can kind of wrap my head around it. But like that agent poll, I put little to no anything into, because if I were an agent and I represented lower end players or like middle of the pack players, and I knew that the Philadelphia Flyers liked to offer beaucoup bucks to middle six guys, I would also recommend my players to go to the Philadelphia Flyers.
Well, I mean, that's how you can look at it, but I don't think that's how they're thinking about it. I think when they're being asked that question, I think they're being asked what teams do you recommend your players
to go to and like have a good quality of life and be taken care of and all that. Yeah, maybe.
Yes,
maybe.
I think that's more the thought process. Yeah,
but there's like the Kevin Hayes contract, so the James Van Riemsdyk contract.
Sure, there are bad contracts, but every team's got them.
Oh, by the way,
every team's got those contracts.
By the way, I forgot to clip this for social last week, and it's fine. And nor did our unpaid intern, who runs the Snow the Goalie Twitter account. But the thing that you brought up about potentially attaching the 2024 first-round pick with JVR, you had so many people upset on Twitter about the hypothetical. Not your fault, but saying that like Chuck Fletcher deserves to be fired on the spot if that were to happen.
But I was talking with I love this. Anthony DeMarco and Jason Martinez about this, and DeMarco brings up a good point. He says, "Well, what if you convince Arizona or Seattle, let's just say, to take that contract and they want that one, but you can in return get a second rounder in 23 as part of it. Does that make it worthwhile?"
Maybe.
And at that point, I have to think about it because you're going from having, because you don't know what Florida's pick's going to be in 2 years. But let's say that they're still a good team,
Yeah.
right? So you're probably somewhere in the
25, 26 range.
at least
Let's say
that,
26.
right?
27?
26, okay.
Sure.
Whatever, 26 to 32, depending on where they're at, right? So
Yeah.
somewhere in the bottom of the
Yep.
first round, okay. And if you need you're sending that out, and that's in a year that's 2 years down the road. It's not as good a draft as the 23 draft is, and in turn, these teams like Arizona and Seattle, who have excess second round picks, I think they each have 3 in 23. They will give you one back that's probably in the neighborhood of, in the 40s overall.
Yeah.
Are you willing to jump back, 10, 12, 15 spots overall, but into a better draft to then get that team to take a 1-year salary off of your hands? I think at that point I can sit there and go, okay, I can do that. I wouldn't do what I suggested last week. I would just remind people, like, that quote unquote hypothetical that I threw out there, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
That just reeks of Chuck, right? I mean, but that's stuff that he does based off of what we saw in the past. But if you can get a draft pick back that's only, like I said, 15 slots further back in a better draft year, then yes, I would consider it. At that point, I would say, okay, that makes some more sense for my team.
So here's my problem, though, right? I have this very strange feeling, and I hope I'm wrong, but it feels like everybody's gone so all in on this 2023 draft. Is there a scenario in which everybody's just wrong? That, like, this isn't the deepest draft in a decade? Like,
not in hockey.
No, but like...
I say not in hockey because every time that they've said this, they've been right.
It's just like...
every
seems
time
like
we've heard about it, they've been spot on.
It just seems like such an anomaly, and like there's part of me that thinks there's like not recency bias, but that there's that the fact that like this is really the first year that scouts have been able to kind of get back in the swing of things in terms of like going and seeing international prospects, and like maybe the juices are flowing, you're feeling a little bit frisky about your projections for next year, and then everybody starts talking, and then it becomes hive mind, and everybody's yelling into the same echo chamber. And I'm just concerned that we're putting so much into a second-round pick in the 2023 draft being something of tremendous value when we're not even really considering that 2024 could be a good draft, or that the first round of the 2024 draft could be a good... I get it conceptually. It scares me a little bit because it really does feel like a lot of teams, including the Flyers, have really opted to try to put many eggs into the 2023 basket, and I just hope that it works.
Well, I mean, like I said, I mean, you never know that the pick that your team gets specifically is going to be a hit. Like, you don't know that. But with the depth of talent that is in that draft, and believe me, they know, and that's why the 2023 picks have been so important throughout the league. They know how deep that draft is going to be. They know that a second-round pick in that draft is going to be akin to the type of player you would normally get in the first round of most other drafts. That's how deep it is. That whether they get the right player or not will remain to be seen. But your odds of getting that kind of player are improved if you have a pick. If you have picks there, right? I mean, so that's what it is. It's not an exact science. So you could be right in the sense that you end up with a player who's a disaster, doesn't work, right? I mean, think about it. Like if I said
that hasn't happened here. That has not happened here. It hasn't happened here recently. There's nothing. You're not speaking from experience here.
Well, no,
not at all.
But the one I was going to give to you is if you go back to the 2003 draft, which was the one that the Flyers had Carter and Richards, right?
Yep.
And every first-round player that was drafted played at least 200 games, I think, in the NHL, except for 2.
Okay.
The number 30 overall pick was the last pick of the first round by St. Louis. Guy by the name of Sean Bell only played 20 games. But think about it. If you're the Rangers, right? New York Rangers, they had the 12th pick in that draft. And the guy that they drafted was Hugh Jessamine, played 2 games in the NHL.
Sucks.
Right? But the guy right after them was Dustin Brown. who
Yep.
won 3 Stanley Cups with the Kings. The guy right after that was Brent Seabrook with Chicago, who won 3 Stanley Cups with the Blackhawks, right? I mean, if you go a little bit further down, you got Zach Parise and Ryan Getzlaff and Ryan Kessler,
You're just
and
making it worse.
Richards and Perry, Corey Perry, who's still playing, right?
Is that why the Rangers keep getting all this lottery luck and why they're in the
Well,
Eastern Conference
but-
Final? Is that what is this the hockey gods smiling on them for what happened in 2003? Is that what you're saying?
My point.
Where's
my
our
point
smile,
is-
Anthony? Where's our smile?
My point to you is that going into that draft, that's all people kept saying. It's a generational draft. This is how deep this draft is going to be. And if you look into that, even into the second round, you find guys who had 1,000 games in the NHL. I mean, I think there's like 6 with over 600. I mean, it's really deep draft, and it's just a matter of, do you get the right guy? And so I would venture to say, when you look at that draft and you go through and say, yeah, they're happy. This team was happy. This team was happy. But there's probably like 5 or 6 that weren't. You know, Pittsburgh took Fleury. They were happy. Carolina, Eric Stahl, happy. Florida took Nathan Horton. He was a good player. Didn't really make a difference. I guess there's kind of like a wash. 3rd overall, maybe, I don't know. Columbus took Zherdev. Not a good player.
No.
Played a while, but not a good player. That was a miss.
The Zherdev we had? Nikolai Zherdev?
Yeah, he came here. Nick Zherdev, yeah.
Yeah, I
It was
like
Columbus's-
Zherdev. I did.
Oh, he was terrible.
No, but he could put the biscuit in the basket.
He was also the guy
Couldn't
that
do anything
thought,
else.
He was the guy who also thought Tim Panaccio was the Russian mob, which was really funny. He snuck out, literally snuck out of a practice one day because he thought Panaccio was the Russian mob.
No.
Oh yeah. That was
Wait
true
a
story.
second. Hold on. Whoa. Hold on. The people who are tuning in to an off-season episode about the Philadelphia Flyers deserve a little bit more context.
There's not a lot to the story.
You're saying that Zherdev snuck out of Flyers practice early because
No,
he
he's saying
saw
somebody
Tim
snuck out of-
Panaccio and thought he was the Russian mob.
he didn't sneak out of practice early. I don't want to make it seem like he left practice early.
Okay.
But what he was doing is, we come in after practice is over.
Yeah.
We used to just all walk into the into the clubhouse or the locker room.
Yep.
And Zherdev must have saw him from down the hall and quickly, and was like, oh shit. And then went into the dressing area, got changed, and snuck out a side door and never came back down. And we were waiting for him, and there was no Zherdev. And, Zach had to tell us he wasn't available. And then the next day he spoke, and he apologized, and he said that he looked at Tim, and he said, I thought you were the Russian mob. And that's why I left out the side door.
Real question: what the hell was Zherdev hiding that he thought the Russian mob was coming for him at skate zone?
knows?
There's
Who
so
knows?
much that. Listen, we had finished Scarface here on this team. All right, Yuri Laterra has been here, and I don't remember Yuri Laterra ever bailing out of practice from the media. What the hell was Zherdev hiding?
Well, Zherdev was a wackadoo too. So yes, that was a miss. Buffalo, Thomas Vanek. I mean, really good player. Played over 1,000 games in this league.
Sure.
San Jose, Milan Mahalik. He played 750 games. Okay. Ryan Suter to Nashville. Okay, still playing.
Yep.
In the NHL. He went 7. Braden Coburn went 8. Played almost 1,000 games in the NHL. He went to Atlanta. Dion Phaneuf went to Calgary at 9. Listen to
It's a
these
damn
names.
good draft. It's crazy.
1,000 games.
Okay.
Montreal's Andre Kostitsyn was not as good. He ended up going back to play in Russia, but he did play 400 games in the NHL. Jeff Carter went 11. Then it was Hugh Jessamine, who was the big miss.
Yep.
That was the Rangers. Dustin Brown to the Kings. Like we already said, Brent Seabrook. And the Islanders had Robert Nilsson, who was just kind of like a third, fourth
This is
line
a
guy.
crazy draft.
Didn't really
Crazy.
pan out. San Jose, Steve Bernier. There you go,
Yep.
630 games. Zach Parise went 17. Eric Fear played 650 games in the NHL. He went to Washington at 18. Getzlaff with Anaheim, obviously won a cup there. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Brent Burns went number 20. I forgot about Brent Burns. Still playing. He went 20 to Minnesota.
You know what his middle name is, right?
No.
Side.
Mister?
Side.
Oh, side.
Here you go, Mr. Burns. Smithies.
Boston, Mark Stewart also had a pretty good career as a defenseman. Edmonton, Marc-Antoine Pouliot. That's a miss. I mean, he didn't really pan out much. Ryan Kessler was a hell of a player, 1,000 games for Vancouver. Flyers actually tried to get him a couple times in trades. Really, really good two-way forward. Then Mike Richards, then Anthony Stewart, who was not that great. Brian Boyle still playing. He went at 26. Jeff Tambellini was not that great of a player, but whatever.
We're getting to the back end of the first round.
But then Corey Perry.
That's a good one.
Corey Perry, he's still playing today. Patrick Eves was a good player, and then Sean Bell. That's the first round.
That's insane.
That was the first round of that draft.
That's a crazy draft.
Second, and then I'm not going to go pick by pick, but just guys in that second round. Louis Erickson, Dallas, over 1,000 games. Patrice Bergeron.
Pretty good player. Pretty good.
Was the second round.
Ooh,
Matt Carl.
What if Bruce Cassidy gets hired here and Bergeron decides not to retire, but he comes here, and then you get two Selke Trophy winners on the same team?
Trade for Pasternak while we're at it.
I just fixed the center depth on this team. Look at that. Butch Cassidy brings the Sundance Kid. Good.
Matt Carl. You remember Matt Carl, right?
I remember Matt Carl.
Yeah.
He was a fine enough defenseman.
Yeah, second round that draft. Shea Weber. Second round in that draft.
Who?
Shea Weber.
Who? Not sure who that is.
David Backus. Second round in that draft. That's what I'm saying.
That's a really good draft. All right, so
it was a hell of a draft.
So what you're saying is where I say that I'm a little bit concerned that there's a chance that we overrate the draft. There's like the recency bias. There's the potential, scouts are getting a little bit too excited about it. You're pointing back to a draft from 19 years ago. It's okay. I'm not going to say that you're wrong. I'm not going to say that you're right. Okay, that's pretty interesting. I want to say something here, Amp, because I did mention that the Flyers, missed on a pick recently, and I want to say, on the record, for the first time ever, there will be no more crapping on Nolan Patrick on this podcast. No more. Oh, I'm not going to let you do it anymore. I know that you've been Mr. Negativity on Nolan Patrick. I have always, tried to give the guy the benefit of the doubt. There was I saw Carchidi linked back to somebody from Vegas Hockey Now who wrote about Nolan Patrick and the rough season he had, like 25 games playing,
I read it.
in and out of the lineup, all that stuff. Okay. Here's the thing. I feel bad for the guy. I think anybody who has a heart should feel bad for a player who doesn't fail because they're bad at the sport, but cannot gain their footing because they can't stay healthy. And that's a shame. And what compounds it, obviously, is that the other three people who were drafted in that top four have all been all-stars. Two of them were available to the Flyers. And we talked about that. And despite the fact that we talked about that years ago and have talked about it ever since, there are still people on Twitter who say, well, did anybody else report this thing? And we've had some people who have gone back and kind of co-opted history and made it seem as though they had been reporting it in the moment. It's fine. We won't be upset. But it looks worse because there wasn't another miss in the top four. Here's a question. Should Jersey fans, and I don't talk to Jersey fans, I actively make it a point in my life to avoid Jersey fans. Like, I'm happily married and have lovely children. But like, if I were a single person in the Delaware Valley and I found what I perceived to be the perfect person, and that person showed up and they had like a Devils sticker on their car, I would run. I might slash a tire, but then I would run. I don't like the Devils. I don't particularly like their fans. Should Devils fans be upset that their team didn't take Makar or even Heiskanen? Do you think they're happy with Hischier? Like, do you think that like ultimately there's enough there to kind of say, you know what, this wasn't, it might not have been like the stud pick that Makar ended up being, but like this is at least a very solid, serviceable player.
Yeah, I think it's one of those draft picks where you go, yeah, we could have had Makar, but it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like Nolan Patrick makes it look bad, right? Because it was just a bad pick. But Hischier's already gotten, he's already scored 78 goals in the NHL. He's got 206 points in 300 games as a very young player. He's only 23. So that could get even better. Only he's second in all honesty, in that draft, only Pettersson has had more points scored than Hischier. Mm-hmm. So when you look at it from that perspective, if you're in New Jersey, you say, would we rather have had Cale Makar? Yeah, probably. Mm-hmm. but we didn't make a bad pick.
Yeah.
By taking Nico Hischier,
Yep.
right? It wasn't a bad pick.
Yep.
Nolan Patrick was a bad pick. Nico Hischier was not a bad pick. That's how I.
If you remember though, at the time,
that's-
some people thought that was a crazy pick that they didn't take Nolan Patrick number 1.
some people did.
And it's kind of funny, like if you look back on it, I actually do wonder if Jersey takes Patrick, does Ron Hextall still go with the forward? Does he take Hischier in that spot? Or does he perhaps succumb? Like I think that, like, let's kind of remove ourselves from the reporting the truth about like what happened behind closed doors there with the scouts and Ron Hextall. If the Devils make that other pick, if they take Nolan Patrick, does Ron Hextall take Hischier, or does he listen and go with Makar and Heiskin? Or, and this is something I don't know, I have not talked to any of the scouts in the room about this one, but I wonder how the scouts would have felt about Hischier versus the defenseman. Like, would the consensus there have been, hey, you know what? Actually, we think that Hischier is a really good player, and we think he should have gone number 1.
They wanted the defenseman
period
ahead of both
okay.
guys. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wipe what I was going to say from the record. We're going to throw it out in the trash. Okay.
But I do think that you have a good question on what would
Hextall have done.
Yeah.
I
he probably would have gone Hischier, and that's because I think he felt like he needed a scorer. He needed a second line center. That was his belief, and so I think he probably would have taken Hischier.
Okay.
But I do wonder. I mean, it is at least worth questioning.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to touch on here, pal?
Fire related? No. Oh,
So-
I'll give you just one thing that this has nothing to do with anything. This is completely,
One last thing.
No, kind of one last thing. We're kind of, we're recording this in the middle of the Game 5 between Tampa and New York. It's no score at the end of the first period, just so people know when we're recording this. But as we were on our way home tonight, my son Andrew said to me, I wouldn't mind if New York won the Stanley Cup. And I looked at him and I'm like, seriously? He's like, yeah, why? I said, because they're the Flyers' biggest rival of all time. He said, no, Pittsburgh. I said, you're young. Mm-hmm. I said, you know that the rivalry, since Crosby. I said, but pre-Crosby, there wasn't much of a rivalry between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. The Flyers dominated the Penguins, except for the years when they had, Lemieux and Yager won those cups in the early 90s. But even at that point, Pittsburgh was in another division. They took them out of the Flyers division, and they were in a separate division. I said, so there wasn't a real rivalry between the two teams. There was only a short stretch of time when both teams were good at the same time. And I said, so that's what you kind of remember. I said, the Rangers by far. I said, and they've played the Rangers more than anybody else in the playoffs. He said, really? And I said, oh, yeah, Rangers by far. And I looked it up, and of course I was right. They've played the Rangers 12 times.
Of course.
But I mean, that's just from memory, right?
Yeah,
I mean, but that's because
yeah.
I just remember playing the Rangers. I didn't know how many. I wasn't like I couldn't.
Was it a big disparity between?
The Rangers are the most at 12.
Okay.
But here's the thing. This is what I found interesting, and I would have gotten this wrong. I'll be honest. I would have gotten this wrong.
Well, here, then ask it to me as a trivia question, and I'll see if I can get it.
Yeah.
This is like Know the Goalie, but flipped.
Yeah, but I'll tell you that I gave Andrew a different answer. Because he said, well, if the Rangers were most, who have they played second most in the playoffs?
Well, I had one come to mind, but I think it's wrong. Is it a Midwest town?
A Midwest town? No.
It's an East Coast team?
Who are you thinking?
I'm not going to tell you because I'll embarrass myself.
Well, no, I mean, but think about it. I mean, you gotta. They've always been in the Eastern Conference. At the very beginning of their, they were called the Western Conference, but it was all the expansion teams. But we're Western Division. But I mean, they've always been, for the most part, in the East. So you're going to be playing more likely you're going to be playing teams from the East in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to venture a guess then. What I was going to say was I was thinking of teams that have done well in the past, and you have to remember that I'm a young person, so there is a total.
I don't think that there's a harm in making a guess. I mean, you could make.
I would have said Detroit because Detroit had a lot of really good teams, and I could have seen the Flyers running into them, and maybe in the decades before I was on this earth.
You got to remember, Detroit was a Western Conference team.
Yeah.
They only played them the one time in the finals in '97, and so they've only been in the East more recently, right?
I said it was gonna be a bad guess. I told you.
It's okay. I mean,
Is it Northeast? Is it a Northeast team?
Yeah.
It's not the Islanders. They played the Devils in the playoffs quite a bit, didn't they? But
so they played the Devils. They've played the Devils 6 times.
6 times.
Ooh. Well, technically 5.
Okay.
One of them was the Colorado Rockies, who was the Devils before they were the Devils.
Okay.
But that makes 6. But
it's not the Islanders.
It's
not the Devils.
The Islanders, they've played 4 times in the playoffs.
Playing along at home. Boston.
Boston, they've played 6 times in the playoffs. It's not a bad guess.
Is it a Canadian team?
It's not, and that's where my mistake was. I said Montreal.
You were going to say Montreal. That's what. Okay.
I said Montreal. They played Montreal 7 times in the playoffs.
Who the hell have they played the second?
It's I know, right?
Well, it's not Pittsburgh. All right, so it's not Pittsburgh. It's not Jersey.
Pittsburgh 7. Pittsburgh and Montreal are third.
Okay, it's not the Islanders.
No,
it can't be the Hurricanes.
They've never played Hartford or Carolina in the playoffs.
Who am I missing? Somebody's screaming right now. Russ is a fraud. I don't know. Who am I missing?
Well, the one that I thought you would have guessed that you haven't guessed and is also wrong would be Washington.
I wouldn't have picked Washington.
They've played them 5 times in the playoffs. So you could have at least gone that route, right?
All right, go ahead.
The answer, with 9 matchups in the playoffs in their history, the Buffalo Sabres.
Wow.
I know.
It's because Buffalo's so bad now that you can't you can't conceptualize.
And I remember so many of those series. And it was like as I was going through counting them, I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh my God, yeah, I forgot about that one. Like, I mean, I was wrong. Like, I mean, I had Montreal as the team that was second, and it's not. It was Buffalo has been the second most amount. So it was a nice little exercise that I looked up, and I'm glad I did it because that was a fun little. Yeah, there's 2 teams in the East currently in the East that they've never played in the playoffs, and it's Carolina and Columbus.
So I want to do this really quick. As you mentioned, we're recording this during, it's the end of the first period of Game 5. And right now, Tampa is a -145 moneyline favorite. If I look, can I see the futures here with Caesars? Yes, I can. Maybe? Maybe? Yes. All right, so the Lightning are +340 to win the Cup, as of us recording. The Rangers are +625. The Avalanche are -230.
Yeah. That Colorado's got to be the favorite. Although, I tell you...
Say what you're going to say. Say what you're going to say.
I always pick goaltending and defense ahead of an offensive team. Mm-hmm. And both the Rangers and Tampa have better goaltending than Colorado. The Tampa has better defense than Colorado. The Rangers probably about a wash defensively with Colorado.
Who do you think is going to win the East? Like, let's go there. You think Tampa will? Are they going to get it done in 6 or is it going to go 7?
Well, I mean, obviously tonight's the big game to determine that. I mean, if
not up, pal. What do you think? 6 or 7?
I would have. If someone asked me today if I would pick Tampa or the Rangers today, I would pick Tampa. Okay. So with that said, can it be 6 or 7? I mean, whether it's 6 or 7, I think even if they lose tonight, I'll pick Tampa. But I'm not certain that a bang. See, here's the thing. So going into a final, you'd say, well, Tampa's Vasilevsky's far superior goalie. Tampa's 2-time defending Cup champion. They know how to win. They're going to try to be the first team since the 80s to win 3 in a row. They've got to be very motivated to do this. But I don't know, man. You take Braden Point out for that long and you match them up against Colorado, I think that might be just enough to switch it. Now, if he's able to come back and play, who knows if he's healthy enough. I mean, they're really keeping it under wraps, the severity of that injury. They really are not telling you how bad it is. That's the one thing. Like I kind of sit there and go, I don't know. I just don't know. But look, Hedman's a stud defensively. He plays 30 minutes a night, and you're not scoring when he's on the ice. And that's, I don't care who you are. He's that good of a player. And like I said, with Vasilevsky in goal, I still got to go Tampa. And and I think I think they're a good bet. What would you say it was plus 360?
Plus 340.
Plus 340. That's a good bet, man. That's good odds.
Yeah. So
that's good odds. I would still go. I would take Tampa right now with those odds.
So we now come to the part of the program where I once again try to clear the air and pull a bunch of whiny people's collective heads from their keisters. We come back to the tweet that I put out 2 weeks ago about if you had the chance to pick the Florida Panthers or the Colorado Avalanche. The tweet once again was, it would make more sense to have to face the two-time Stanley Cup champion, defending champion, Tampa Bay Lightning in the final than have to face them in the second round. And what you just said is you think that Tampa could very well win the Stanley Cup. And this is where I come back to, once again, the point all along, the point of the tweet that people are still upset about is that a smart hockey decision would have been to go with the Colorado Avalanche. This removes all other factors, family factors, everything else, which we talked about on the show so many times. I feel like we had gone into more depth and detail about the Giroux family and all the mitigating factors that could have affected a potential change than any other player that we have ever talked about in any other sport. When you and I have done Snow the Goalie, when you and I have done Crossing Broadcast on 610 ESPN, we talked more about all the other circumstances with that one situation than any other player that I can ever remember talking about a trade happening in the city of Philadelphia. Okay? Which I think is ridiculous, by the way. And I can't wait to see all these people bring the same energy to the table the next time a Flyer or any other player in the NHL or any other sport is traded. Colorado has lived up to what they were supposed to be. And I am aware that Colorado in the past has come up short. But this Colorado team, I felt, was best positioned to get out of the West and to make the Stanley Cup final. And I didn't think they had a team that they were going to run into along the way that was going to be an existential threat. Okay? In the East, I don't care how many points Florida put up. I don't care how stylistically how enjoyable it was to watch Florida play. I did not believe Florida was the best team in the East. Just because you have the most points does not mean that you are necessarily the best team in the league or the best team in the conference. And it played out. And so once again I say, what? No, Siri, I can't. Once again I come around to, I would have rather play against Tampa in the final than get bounced in the second round. And that's it. And it's probably, I think you're right. I think Tampa's probably going to make it. For the betting perspective and for what I do and for driving revenue for our sites and all of our partner sites, I want New York in the final because it's good for business. But I think Tampa's going to end up there. And I'd have a really hard time betting against Tampa. It's been my position all along. If New York makes it, I'll eat my words and I'll say the hell with it. But
so my response again, and I'm going to add to it. I'm going to give a similar response to last week, but I'm going to give you a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So at the time that the trade deadline comes about, you don't know when you're going to play Tampa. Tampa at that time was struggling. They were falling backwards. There was even a point where they slipped into a wild card spot. Mm-hmm. Boston had passed them in the standings, and so there was a chance that Tampa wasn't even going to be in the same division with you, that Tampa would have ended up in the Metro with playing Carolina in the first round. So you didn't know where Tampa was going to be. So it was kind of hard to really kind of dictate your decision on that. Secondly, Colorado, while you say they had an easier path, and I don't disagree with that, the West was a little bit more top-heavy. The fact of the matter is they did get a little lucky here, which you always need. Even good teams need luck. And they got lucky in the sense that Binnington was playing great goal for the Blues and gets knocked out. And then Colorado has a much easier time winning that second-round series against a St. Louis team that was poised to upset them. Yep. And then secondarily, Edmonton upsets Calgary, so you don't have to play the better defensive team and better goaltending team. And it was basically a walkover for Colorado because Edmonton stinks, okay?
Yep.
I say it repeatedly, this Edmonton, like Toronto, will never win until they have defense and goaltending. You can get all the goal scorers you want. You're not winning in the playoffs. It keeps happening to both of those teams. They don't understand why, and it's kind of stupid. So Colorado did get a little bit lucky, but I mean I can see what your point is, that they certainly had an easier path to the final than Florida did, because not just Tampa, but there were other teams in the East that were really good that could have been. I mean, if Florida ran up against this Rangers team, they would have had a hard time beating this Rangers team too.
Sure.
I mean, obviously the Rangers are playing great hockey, right? But here's the thing that I didn't say last week.
Oh boy.
If Claude Giroux would have gone to Colorado, there's pretty much a zero chance in hell he would have re-signed there next year, just because of their financial situation. He wants to re-sign in Florida. And Barry Zito said he wants to find a way to keep Claude Giroux in Florida. So when you look at it, not just in the vacuum of this season, but in looking at it and saying, okay, over the course of this season plus maybe the next 2 to 3, where do I have the best chance of finally winning a Stanley Cup? Florida probably gives you the best odds long term, over multiple years. And so if you're looking at it in your vacuum, then maybe yes, you could be correct. But if you're Claude Giroux and looking at it and saying, okay, I think I want to go there, and then I'll stay there, even if we don't win the cup this year. I think then that's the better choice for him.
I don't disagree. Once again, I come back to it was a vacuum. It was a hockey tweet about a hockey decision, and that's it. That's it. I don't give a shit about any of the other stuff. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Again, like I don't care. The whole argument, the argument's right. There is no disputing the argument. In a vacuum, a hockey move for the rest of this year, Colorado was the best choice. They have made it to the Stanley Cup final. They will probably play Tampa. God knows what'll happen. They might still lose there. And then ultimately, I guess none of it matters. But man, like all this other shit that like keeps coming up, this is what drives me nuts. It's like, well, you know, you think about the next couple of years and you think about the family situation. No. Whoa. Yes, I understand that. The human element's very important. I have a family. If I were making a big decision like that, family would be probably the biggest part of it, right? But again, when we analyze hockey from a hockey perspective and say, where's the guy's best chance to win? I don't think there's disputing that Colorado was the best pick. All the other factors figured in, Florida was the best decision for him. He made the best call for him and his family. I don't fault him for that. I don't give a shit either way. The Flyers got something for their captain. And there was a chance that if he decided to get very petty, he could have said, facilitate the trade or don't, and I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to leave in the offseason, and then you get nothing for him. So, like, I don't care. I don't care. I hope he's happy. I hope that his family's happy. I hope he finds success with Florida or with like Ottawa if he goes home. I don't give a shit. But I have to say, Ant, this is the thing that drives me nuts. I don't remember there ever being a situation like this where so many people have whined incessantly about all of the other factors. This person earned their no movement, and this person earned their no trade, and this person this and this and that, and there you don't know their families. I don't give a shit. I don't. And I don't think anybody else should either. Players are ultimately going to, and the NHL is behind the curve in this. They're not quite there yet, but player empowerment in multiple leagues is getting to be more and more toxic, or is getting to be more of a concern for owners. It's eventually going to happen in hockey. Ultimately, I don't care. These players are going to go where they want to go, or they're going to try to force their way to where they want to force. And more power to them. If that's the way that they get to kind of balance the scales in their favor versus like what the owners get to do and have exponentially, more control, fine. But I just find the whole thing so damn exhausting. And again, I hope that the next time a Flyer is traded or a player in this league is traded, that everybody shows up with the same energy about what about this and what about that and what about this. The next time a guy gets dealt, and I don't care if it's a good player, right? Like if James Van Riemsdyk gets traded, okay, and people are, celebrating out in the streets that, oh, the Flyers got off that $7 million contract, that horrible albatross. I hope all those people who have been bitching and moaning for months about what about Claude Giroux's family? What about this? I hope those people do a little bit of research, and I hope those people find out, is James Van Riemsdyk going to be happy in Arizona or in Seattle? Is his family going to be happy moving across the country? Is that best for them? Because if not, don't come at me with your like virtue signaling bullshit about like this guy, this guy, this guy. Do it for everybody. Do it for every player. If we're going to do that, if you're going to do that, because I'm not, if you're going to do that, if you're listening, or if you've been like all, wishy-washy, have the same energy for every player that gets dealt. Otherwise, you are a whining problem. That's it. That's it.
So if you want to leave a 5-star review.
Yeah. Leave a 5-star. Tell me I'm an asshole. But do it with a 5-star review. If you do a 1-star review or 2 or 3 or 4, I'm not reading it on the show. But 5 stars, you can tell me why I'm wrong. You can tell me how I'm like heartless and I'm like the Antichrist or something. Like you can certainly do that. But leave a 5-star review. We'll read it on next week's show. I don't mean to be rude. Like I genuinely don't. I just think that like the energy around it was just so strange from the get-go. And I honestly, you've covered this team for 20 years. You've been around many more teams than I have. Do you remember there ever being a situation like this? And I know that social media fans the Flames. Like I get that like we can't get a fair measure on like the 80s or the 90s how this would have played out. But like, did this happen with Lindros?
Yeah, I mean Lindros was the only comparator, and it's not even the same kind of situation. It's still kind of comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah,
people cared where he was going, and like I can still remember when the Flyers ended up trading him to New York. It was like, oh my God, you're trading him to the Rangers of all places! I can't believe you're trading him to the Rangers. And there was a lot of upset fans at that time. But there were sides. People really like dug in. There were people who took sides with the team. There were people who took sides with Lindros. So it was different kind of scenario back then. I could only imagine what that would have been like in a social media generation.
Sure.
It would have been insanity. It would have been absolute insanity at that time. But that's really the only other one Flyer related anyway. I mean
I can't think of anybody I can't think of the Phillies. Even when they
you gotta remember
when they dealt like Utley and Rollins. Right?
Nah,
like,
I mean those guys had already won. Got to remember those guys won.
True.
So if you want to go, you got to go before them. So I would go back to like Scott Rowland, who didn't want to play here anymore. He kind of forced his way out.
Iverson didn't win, but like they traded him to Denver, and that was kind of whatever. People, he had kind of run his course with some of the fans.
Schilling, Barkley.
Sorry.
There weren't really trades back in the day in football. They just didn't happen. They happen a lot more now than they did.
People were upset when like T.O. did his thing and like ultimately forced his way out of town. But like I don't think that's what I'm saying. Like I just don't remember this ever being, and maybe it's because the guy was the captain for so long, and like people my age who happen to use social media, like that was the guy. Like we watched him as he came up as a younger player, and there was all this kind of hope, and like he was the best player on this team for a decade and all that. And like maybe there's just like more of an emotional tie. And I don't know if I've just like become like desensitized to all of that kind of stuff at this point. But like I just think it's strange. And it's fine. Fans can be fans. I'm not telling fans not to be fans. You can be a fan however you want. I think the whole thing is just strange. That's it.
Fair.
Again, did I not say on this show many times, we hope that there was no family issue in terms of like extended family about like having to move away from people who might have like been dealing with illness, or like there were elderly family members that they're gonna have to move away from, and like we did the whole humanized thing. It's just like this is kind of like social media, right? Like you can say something in support of a person or group, and if you don't say enough of it, or if you don't go as far as, another small part of that group want you to go, then you didn't do enough. I don't know. I have to tell you, Ant, he's not coming back here. We don't know who the coach is. We don't know which coach is going to come here. There are decisions to be made. I will tell you, I'm a little bit more positive about this team next year than I was last week. Do you know why?
Why is that?
Because I'm somehow talking myself back into, well, you make the playoffs and You never know what'll happen.
Well,
I'm not actually talking myself into that. I will not. I will never be that kind of fan. I refuse.
I don't know
stupid.
why.
I think it's insane.
I don't know why.
I told you.
In this sport, it happens more than any other.
Didn't happen this year. I want to see next year. I need a bigger sample size. I think you're
going
to.
It didn't happen this year.
Didn't happen this year.
What place was Tampa in their division?
I don't care. There were two times. They're an anomaly. Hold on, an anomaly.
What place was Edmonton
Tampa Bay,
in their division?
Fake team. You said fake team. Tampa Bay, 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion. They don't count.
My point is of the final 4 teams, only one of them, Colorado, won their division.
Sure.
Only one of the final 4 won their division. Now, to be fair, no wild cards made it this year. So if you want to sit there and say, well, you shouldn't battle for the wild card, look, see, it didn't happen. The wild card didn't get there. Okay, fine. That's fine. This year did not happen. But you did have 2 third-place teams from their division get to the Final Four, meaning they beat the second-place team and the first-place team in their division in the playoffs to get to the Final Four.
I come back to star-driven. I wonder if what we're starting to see is a push toward the star-driven league.
I don't think you'll get that. I'll tell you why you're seeing that.
Please
you're not
please
wrong.
do. This is a good like hour into the show conversation. I'm glad we got here. Go ahead.
No. You're not wrong because the reason you're seeing it is because the league has had a flat cap for 4 years now, because the cap doesn't keep going up. So teams are having a hard time building beneath the stars, right? So at this point, the stars have to dictate what's happening. So the teams with the star players right now are going to be the ones that are going to be most successful, because you can't really build the team underneath it, because the guys who you used to build with, they've gotten to a point where they're good enough to make more money, and so now they have to go somewhere else because you can't afford to keep them because of what's beneath. So therefore, the teams that have the star players right in this moment, and I think that's why a lot of what you're seeing this year is the teams that have those best players, those big name players, are the ones that are succeeding.
That makes sense.
Once that cap starts going up again, and so you might have one more year of this next year, but once that cap starts going up again in 24-25, I think you'll start to see it revert back. Hockey will never be the will never be the NBA. It's not. It's too much. It's ingrained in these kids from too young of an age at how much team matters over individual, that you will never see the individual dictate who's we're going to put together a dream team, we're going to put together a super team. It won't happen in hockey, just because from such a young age they are taught that the team comes first and then the individual comes second. I think that you're right.
Well, yeah,
this moment.
Toronto's not a good one because they had 2 that they had drafted.
Yeah.
Okay,
it just doesn't happen. I mean, Tavares was the only guy that they brought in.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is he was the only free agent. The other 2 were drafted and theoretically like developed by the team, so it doesn't work there. Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. Here's the problem.
Same thing with Edmonton. Same thing with Colorado. I mean, all those guys were all drafted.
Here's the problem with me, being me, and some people say I'm a troll. This year we could write off as an anomaly if it reverts back to the mean next year. But if next year
there might be one more year.
I know you said that, but that's why. Yeah. See, that's good for somebody like me, because if it happens again, then it goes from anomaly to a small sample size, and if it happens again, then we've got proof of concept. So we're already a third of the way there, and in a few years, I can look back and say, "Hey, Anthony, I was right," or if I'm wrong, I'll just never mention it again. So there's always that. There's always that. People are going to have to mark this, and they're going to have to mine it in 2 years, when we're not on Twitter and we're on some other weird social media platform trying to promote the show. It'll be fine. All right. Hey, I said to you, what did I say to you? I want you to pull back the curtain. What did I say to you when I proposed doing a show on Thursday night? What did I say?
You just wanted to do 20 minutes to get something up.
Because I like the idea of consistency, and we always get messages on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram if we don't put a show out. Where's Snow the Goalie? That's not BS. And again, we greatly appreciate the thousands of people who listen to the show every week. I think it's great. I love it. Absolutely love it. I think you and I, from where we built this thing from nothing to that, we didn't inherit a listener base from another show or from other people. And that's not a shot, by the way. That happens in
all
sports podcasts. It happens in regular podcasts. I go to one of my favorite podcasts, Reply All, is about to like stop or cease or something. They had like there's a whole thing like a year ago or 2 years ago, like a big scandal thing, and they removed one of the co-hosts who's now doing another podcast, which is actually really good. Crypto Island, very good. But like you can have a scenario where like you inherit a listener base that was built on the backs of other people, and like that's good, and like that can be good for you if you can maintain that. And like to some extent, like we kind of have that with Crossing Broadcast. Like that was a show that was built on me and Lefko and Kyle, and then we kind of rolled with it, and we did more stuff with that. And like it's nice when you can inherit that. But like for us here, we started with a listener base of 0, and we've grown it to thousands of listeners, and it's awesome, and we're very happy. And like, despite the fact that this team isn't good or hasn't really been good for the vast majority of the time we've done the show, here we are. And it's kind of nice. So I feel like we kind of owe it to the people who have been with us from day one, and even the people who are with us today for the first time ever, who for some reason have listened to an hour and 10 minutes of the show. We kind of owe it to them to put out a show. And look at it. Instead of it being 20 minutes, we've done over an hour. There's some solid hockey conversation in there. There's a little bit of sensationalist nonsense from you. And and look, we had like a fun little episode here, and I hope people enjoyed it. And I hope that, you know, when you listen to this, if you're like a night owl and you're listening to it when I put it up on YouTube or on any of the podcast feeds late Thursday night, if you're listening, you know, God bless you. Thank you so much. If you don't believe in God, you know, tree bless you or whatever. And I think that's great. And if you're listening to it on Friday, you know, thank you. If you're listening Saturday, Sunday, Monday, like whenever you listen, some people don't listen in the first day or two. It's always fun to kind of like watch the listener arcs and to see like, does a social media post kind of like propel it higher? It's always fun to, I love watching that kind of stuff as it plays out. But yeah, thank you to those of you who listen. Our good pal Bundy has been like back and forth. He is all in on this Ice Wars venture, and he is busting his ass over there, and he will be back.
We might be all in on the Ice Wars.
I know. Well, and he will be back. I just want to give people an idea. Like Bundy has like not gone anywhere. He hasn't been here for the last 2 weeks, but he's off like trying to build that thing into this massive juggernaut, and he'll be back. So don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, we've been getting so just so people know. I mean, I don't want to get into specifics.
Then don't.
All I'm going to say is we've been getting texts about what's going on with Ice Wars and how it's growing and potential involvement.
Well, okay,
down the road.
That's why. I'm gonna have to edit.
That's
that.
all.
Maybe
That's all.
I don't know. But listen,
it was just a little bit. You know.
As always, we're happy.
It grows that audience. Russ.
It does.
That's
and we are happy. We are happy to do the show. I hope that everybody who listened enjoyed it. I hope that we explained some thoughts and some thought processes a little bit better. Maybe the Flyers will have a coach next week. If they don't, I honestly am beyond the point of getting upset that they don't have a coach. Just have a coach by the regular season. That's all I ask.
Let me just
regular
say this.
season. I don't even need him for training camp. I don't need a coach for training camp. Let the guys roll the pucks out. Just roll them out. All right, don't drop the pucks. Actually, roll them. Roll them on their side. You know, like here's my Galaxy Pods thing, right? Case. Just roll the pucks out. I don't even care. Just opening night, have a head coach. That's all I ask for.
So the NHL frowns upon teams not in the Stanley Cup Finals making news during the Stanley Cup Final. So unless Barry Trotz decides to go to a team in the next 3 days, 3 to 4 days, as long as this Tampa-New York series is still going on, because he's got to go first, and then all the chips will start to, all the dominoes will fall into place behind it, right? I mean, it'll be very fast moving beyond that. Unless he makes that decision in the next 3 to 4 days, there won't be an announcement until after the Stanley Cup Final is over for any team.
I meant to throw this out to you because I've seen this on Twitter. I don't remember who did it. I'm sorry if I did. I would cite you. There is a small segment of the fan base that seems to believe that the Flyers have their coaching decision already made, but they don't want to announce it until Barry Trotz announces because they don't want the public blowback of hiring somebody who's not Barry Trotz. I don't think that's true. I think even if, like, say conceptually they're like, John Tortorella is our guy, I think it's more that they wouldn't announce it because of like the league protocol and like the league's kind of like, you know, unofficial standing on things than it is that they don't want to hire John Tortorella and then have fans go, I hire Barry Trotz. You should have paid him more. I can't imagine that's happening, right?
No, it's not happening, as a matter of fact, because I know that they're bringing, again, I know they had an interview today. and that they're bringing people back for second interviews. So, like, I know the process is ongoing, and so therefore that is a false report. It's a false narrative, for lack of a. I mean, I don't guess it's not being reported. It's just more of a narrative. And even if they know, even if Barry Trotz has told them, yeah, I'm not picking you guys, they would never put that out publicly.
Yeah.
Because they could always go back to him if he hasn't made a decision yet and say, well, we've changed our mind. We'll make it $9 million. Or we'll make it whatever. I mean, I'm saying,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I mean, they could always do that, right? They could always go back and make the guy think about it again.
Mm-hmm.
So until he actually comes out and says where he's going, the Flyers, they're not going to hire. And then nobody else is either. I mean, everybody who wants Barry Trotz is waiting.
Yeah.
I mean, is anybody else getting grief? Are the Dallas Stars getting grief? Or the Vegas Knights getting grief? Or the Detroit Red Wings, whose GM is Steve Yzerman, who's fantastic, are they getting grief that they haven't hired a coach yet? Like, I mean, let's be honest, people. I mean, yeah, the Flyers are in the same boat with all these other teams, and they're waiting for one guy to make his decision, and then they'll all make their decisions.
What if the belle of the ball decides to just go home and not go to prom at all? Can you imagine? Can you imagine after all of this, Barry Trotz just says, yeah, I don't want to coach. I'm taking a year off.
He may not. He may not want to.
Holy smokes. Can you imagine, though? What a wild scenario that would be. All right. I think it's time, Ant. I do. I think it's time. I will just let people know that you can listen to Snow the Goalie wherever you get your podcasts. That's Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts. I don't know if we're on Pandora, but I don't know who listens to podcasts on Pandora. If you do, by all means, leave a 5-star review. Tell me not only am I a jerk, but also that I downplayed the importance of Pandora podcasts. If we're on there, cool, just let us know. Remember that you can ask any of your smart devices to play the newest episode of Snow the Goalie or Snow the Goalie, a Flyers podcast. One of them needs that little extra layer of specificity, but that's fine. It's no big deal. You can do it. I believe in you. And then you can also watch the full episode.
You're not going to tell them which one that is? It's Alexa.
Now you.
I'm just saying. I mean, you don't want to.
Alexa, play the Wheels on the Bus. Somebody's cursing me right now because I just activated their Echo Dot. I'm very happy about that. I did that to video guy Craig. I forgot to tell you this. I did it like a week ago. I said, "Hey, do you have any smart devices in your house?" He goes, "Yeah, I have an Echo." And I did that, and he was so mad because in the background I could just hear the Wheels on the Bus playing. Anyway, you can listen to us hands-free with any of your smart devices. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts. You can go over to youtube.com/crossingbroad. There's a whole playlist of every episode in the last month or two of Snow the Goalie. Also, interviews that we've done in the past with former players and coaches and executives. You can go back and kind of like dive into that archive if you so choose. There are, if you're really bored, if for some reason you're bored and you decide to go back and like mine all the good and bad takes we've had over the last like 4 years, 3 years, however many years it's been for, you can go back and you can find some other interviews that we've done that didn't make the YouTube cut. Jordan Wheel, who had the funniest story about his favorite hockey arena to play in. That one will live in infamy. The Dale Weiss interview that led to him getting cut the next day, that is in the archive in the podcast feed as well. So go listen there, watch the show. You can follow us.
It's been more than 4 years, Russ.
No, we started in 18.
We started in March of 18.
Yeah.
It's now June of 22.
So it's been 4 years. Okay, so 4+. Okay.
Yeah, it's 4+.
Yeah,
We're
4+.
into our 5th year.
That's gross. That feels weird. I don't know how to feel about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Snow the Goalie. You can find Ant at AntSanPhilly. You can find me at Joy on Broad. Remember, all of those links are in the description of the episode, so you don't even have to go out of your podcast app to subscribe and all that. We have that link tree thing that we put out with the podcast. You can go there and click all the buttons and follow all the people, and you can do the subscribing thing and all that. So we have that for you as well. If you made it an hour and 19 or so minutes into the podcast, again, bless you. Thank you so much for listening. I don't know why you listened to the end, but I do appreciate it, and Anthony appreciates it. Make sure you go over to Apple Podcasts, even if you don't like Apple Podcasts, even if you don't listen there. Go to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. You can leave nice words for Ant, maybe nice words for Bundy. If you have a nice word for me, sure. If you want to flame me, again, remember, you have to leave a 5-star review. I will read it. You can say that I am the worst person. Replace this guy with insert the name of podcast hosts elsewhere. Let Anthony's son host the show with him. Let Anthony burp into the microphone whenever Russ should have talked. I will read that on the show, but it has to be a 5-star review.
Are you listening? Dan Marcus?
5-star review. Has to be a 5-star review. Otherwise, it doesn't get read. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Anyway, for Ant, I'm Russ. Thanks for listening to Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast. Anthony, chances that somebody launches a Flyers podcast this year, is there a chance? We're still the only one.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe? Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe not. All right. That's it for this week. We'll talk to you again next week here on Snow the Goalie.